The nightmare under the Christmas lights. Every night he would enter her room after midnight. The truth turned Christmas into a nightmare. And if you have ever felt like something terrible is happening under your own roof, but everyone is making you believe you are crazy, today I am going to tell you something I never thought I would share. My name is Martha Sullivan. I am 63 years old and I have lived in Atlanta, Georgia since I was born. I thought I knew my family. I thought that after 35 years of marriage to George, I could trust him. I thought that our daughter Clara was the jewel of our lives and that our son-in-law Ethan was a good man. I was wrong about everything. It was December of last year. The air smelled like gingerbread and apple cider when I started noticing strange things. George, my husband, had inexplicably changed his nighttime habits. For decades, we slept together in our master bedroom in this house, in the quiet suburb that we bought when we were young, investing every dollar we earned working at the Peachtree Farmers Market. But since November, George had started getting up every night around 12:30. At first, I thought it was prostate issues. At his age, 67 years old, it was normal. But when I asked him in the morning, he denied even getting up. "You're imagining things, Martha. I slept like a baby all night," he would tell me as he spread butter on his toast without even looking me in the eye. One night, in the middle of December, I decided to pretend I was sleeping. I closed my eyes and waited. Punctually, at 12:37 a.m., I felt George get up, being careful not to make a sound. His bare feet crossed our cold tile floor. He opened the door with the delicacy of someone who does not want to be discovered and stepped out into the hallway. My heart started pounding so hard I thought it would give me away. I got up silently and walked to the slightly ajar door. From there, I could see the hallway connecting the 3 bedrooms in our house. Ours, Clara and Ethan's, and the small one where my one-year-old granddaughter Lily slept. George headed straight for our daughter's room. He softly tapped the door. She opened it. He went in and closed it behind him. A cold sweat covered my entire body. What was my husband doing in our daughter's room at that hour? Ethan, her husband, worked as a night security guard for a company and did not get home until 6:00 the morning. Clara was alone in there. I returned to bed trembling, but I could not sleep. Every noise in the house startled me. Was it normal for a father-in-law to visit his daughter in the middle of the night when her husband was gone? Was it normal for my husband to lie to me about those nighttime meetings? The next morning during breakfast, I tried to approach the subject subtly. "George, I heard you get up last night. Everything okay?" He was quietly chewing his scrambled eggs while reading the news on his phone. "I did not get up, Martha. I already told you I did not, but I saw you leave the room. You are losing it, old lady. Maybe you have Alzheimer's already." Clara, who was packing Lily's lunch for school, turned towards me with an expression I could not interpret. It was not surprise. It was not worry. It was annoyance. "Mom, you are starting with your weird stuff again. Dad did not get up last night. I was up late watching TV, and I did not hear anything." Lily, my granddaughter, was nibbling her cinnamon roll without participating in the conversation. But I saw her look at all of us with a strange expression in her eyes, as if she knew something she could not say. "Lily, my love, did you hear anything last night?" I asked her directly. The girl opened her mouth to answer, but Clara sharply interrupted her. "Leave the kid alone, Mom. Do not drag her into your paranoia." Over the next few days, the pattern repeated religiously. George would get up between 12:30 and 1 a.m. He He would walk to Clara's room and return approximately 1 hour later. I know because one night I stayed awake, timing his movements with the clock on the nightstand that had belonged to my mother. I decided to confront Clara directly. It was December 22nd. We were in the kitchen preparing the turkey and mashed potatoes for the Christmas dinner, a tradition we had kept since she got married. The aroma of roasting herbs and spices filled the whole house, mixing with the smell of the Christmas tree we had put up in the living room. "Honey, I need to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth." Clara kept spreading butter on the mashed potatoes without looking at me. "Tell me, Mom, why does your father go to your room every night when Ethan is not here?" Her hands stopped. Slowly she raised her face to me. In her eyes, I saw something that chilled my blood. It was not surprise. It was fear. And then, very quickly, that fear transformed into rage. "What are you talking about, Mum? Dad does not come to my room. Clara, I have seen him every night. He leaves our room, goes toward yours, enters, and leaves about an hour later. You are crazy, Mom, completely crazy." But her voice was trembling. And for the first time in weeks, I realized that my daughter, my girl, whom I had raised with so much love, had deep dark circles under her eyes and had lost weight. Her face, which had always been rounded and smiling, looked gaunt and tense. "Clara, what is happening in this house? Tell me the truth." She threw the spoon onto the table with such force that mashed potatoes splattered everywhere. "Enough, Mum, you are making things up. Dad does not come to my room, and even if he did, it is not your problem." "How is it not my problem? I am his wife. I am your mother. I am an adult woman. I am 32 years old. I do not need you to look after me." If this terrifying story has touched you, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. Sharing this video will really help me grow and continue telling my story. That night, December 22nd, I stayed awake again. George got up at 12:45 a.m. But this time, instead of staying in bed, I decided to follow him. Barefoot, I walked down the hallway until I was close to Clara's door. I heard voices, first George's, in a tone I had never heard in 35 years of marriage. It was soft, persuasive, almost seductive. "You know this is what you need. Clara, do not pretend you do not like it." Then I heard my daughter's voice, broken, pleading. "Please, Daddy, no more. Ethan is going to get suspicious if I keep being this nervous. Ethan does not suspect anything. He is an idiot. And besides, you know what is going to happen if you tell anyone." My world collapsed at that moment. My legs trembled so much that I had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. My husband, the man with whom I had built a life, a family, a home, was abusing our daughter. And she knew it. She knew why Mom seemed so tired lately. On December 23rd, while Clara had gone downtown to buy the last Christmas gifts, I decided to speak to George directly. We were alone in the living room, him watching football on television and me pretending to knit a scarf for Lily. The Christmas tree blinked with coloured lights that now seemed obscene to me, as if the holiday cheer was a cruel mockery of what I was discovering. "George, we need to talk." He kept looking at the screen, drinking beer directly from the bottle. "About what, Martha? About what happens at night? About what you do when you get up?" This time he did turn towards me. His expression showed neither surprise nor guilt. It was a cold, calculating look, as if he was evaluating how much I knew and how to handle the situation. I do not know what you are talking about. I know you go to Clara's room every night. I know she does not want you to. And I know you threaten her so she will not say anything." George set the beer down on the coffee table with a dry thud. He got up from the armchair and walked towards where I was sitting. His proximity intimidated me in a way I had never experienced in more than 3 decades of marriage. "Martha, listen to me very carefully. You have no idea what you are saying, and I suggest you stop making up nonsense before this becomes a problem for everyone in this house." "Oh, a problem for who, George? For you? For Lily?" The 2 words fell like a death sentence. Lily, my granddaughter, my adored Lily, 11 years old, with her always perfect braids and her laugh that filled the whole house when she came home from school. I understood the threat immediately. You would not dare. Clara understands very well that some things are better kept in the family, that there are certain traditions that pass from generation to generation, and that if someone wants to change those traditions, the consequences can be very painful for the most innocent people. I was paralyzed. George was not only abusing our daughter, but he was threatening her with hurting Lily if she spoke. And now he was making the same threat to me. "You are a monster," I whispered. "I am the man who has supported this family for 35 years. I am the one who pays the electricity, the water, the food you eat. I am the one who has the contacts at the bank where we keep our savings, the one who knows the police in the sector, the one who decides what happens and what does not happen in this house." He moved closer, so close that I could smell the alcohol on his breath mixed with the aroma of his cheap cologne. "And you are an old woman who has nowhere to go if I decide you no longer live here. A woman who never worked, who has no property in her name, who depends completely on me to survive. So I suggest you continue to be the quiet and obedient wife you have always been." When Clara returned that afternoon with the bags of gifts, her eyes were swollen as if she had been crying. She headed straight to her room without greeting anyone. Lily, who was doing homework at the dining room table, looked up worriedly. "Grandma Martha, why is Mum always sad at Christmas?" My granddaughter's question broke my heart. How to explain to an 1-year-old girl that her family world was a lie? How to protect her from a truth that could destroy her innocence forever? Sometimes adults have worries that children do not understand, my love. But Mum cries a lot, and Grandpa George is always in a bad mood, and you look very sad lately, too. Lily was more perceptive than any of us had imagined. She had noticed that something was wrong in the family, although she could not identify exactly what. "You know what, Lily? Come here." I took her hand and led her to my room. I closed the door and we sat on my bed, the same one where I had slept with George for decades, where we had conceived Clara, where we had planned our future when we were young and believed in love. "My love, I want to ask you something very important, and I need you to tell me the truth." The girl nodded with those big, trusting eyes that only children who still believe that adults will always protect them have. "Has Grandpa George ever done anything that makes you feel uncomfortable? Has he touched you in any way you do not like? Has he told you not to tell anyone about something you did together?" Lily frowned, thinking carefully before answering. "No, Grandma. Grandpa almost never talks to me." But what, my love? Sometimes I hear noises at night like someone is crying. And once I saw Grandpa come out of Mum's room very late. What else have you seen, Lily? Mum has bruises on her arms. She hides them with long sleeves. But I saw them when she was taking a shower. And once I heard her talking on the phone with someone, telling them she could not take it anymore, that she wanted to die. My world completely collapsed. Clara was not only being sexually abused by her father, but she was also being beaten. And my granddaughter, my little Lily, had been a silent witness to all this horror. Lily, my love, everything you are telling me is very important, but I need you not to tell anyone that we talked about this for now. Is that okay? Not even Mum. Especially not Mum. At least not yet. Grandma is going to fix all this, but I need time to think about how to do it the right way. That night was Christmas Eve. Traditionally, the whole family gathered to have turkey, hot cider, and cranberry sauce. Clara had invited Ethan to have dinner with us before he went to work, and my sister Eleanor and her husband David were also coming. But when the guests arrived, the tension in the house was so thick you could cut it with a knife. George acted like the perfect patriarch, pouring shots of bourbon and telling jokes. But I could see how Clara flinched every time he came near her. Ethan, poor man, seemed completely oblivious to what was happening in his own home. During dinner, while everyone talked about plans for the new year and commented on how delicious the food was, I could not stop observing my family as if I were seeing them for the first time. My sister Eleanor praising George for being such a good father and grandfather. Ethan thanking his father-in-law for taking such good care of Clara while he worked nights. Lily eating in silence with that premature maturity that children who have seen too much develop. When Ethan left for work around 10 at night, and Eleanor and David said goodbye shortly after, the house was once again in that oppressive atmosphere that had become normal. George poured himself another glass of bourbon and sat in his favorite armchair to watch television. "Clara, come here!" he shouted from the living room. My daughter, who was clearing the dinner dishes, froze for a moment. Then she walked towards her father with slow steps, like a condemned woman walking to the gallows. "Sit here with me. It is Christmas Eve." Clara sat on the couch next to his, keeping the greatest possible distance. George put his hand on my daughter's leg and left it there, possessive, threatening. "We are a very close family, right, Clara?" "Yes, Daddy. And close families take care of each other, right? They keep the secrets that need to be kept." "Yes, Daddy." "Good, because tonight is going to be very special for the two of us." At that moment, I knew I could not continue to be a silent spectator. I could not allow George to continue destroying my daughter one more night, but I also knew that confronting him directly could endanger Lily. I had to make a decision, and I had to make it that very night. At 11 at night, when Lily had already gone to sleep, and the house was silent, I decided I could not stand by and do nothing. George had turned up the volume on the television to cover up any noise that might come from Clara's room. It was his way of telling me that he knew that I knew, but that I did not care enough to do anything about it. I got up from the sofa, where I had been pretending to watch the Christmas movies, and walked to the kitchen. I needed to think clearly, and I had always found peace in that space where I had cooked for my family for so many years. I put water on to boil to make myself some chamomile tea, but my hands were trembling so much that I almost dropped the teapot. While waiting for the water to boil, I opened one of the drawers where I kept the important house documents. All the papers that George controlled were there. The deed to the house, the bank statements, the insurance policies. Everything was in his name. Everything. Even the house we had bought with the money I had inherited from my parents when they died. In 1987, when we bought this property in the quiet suburb, I had the capital from the sale of my parents' house. But George convinced me to put everything in his name for tax reasons because he understood those issues better and because it would be easier to get loans in the future. I trusted him completely. Why would I not? He was my husband, the father of my daughter, the man who was supposed to love and protect me until death. Now I realized that this decision had turned me into a prisoner with no property in my name, without independent bank accounts, without a job that would give me economic autonomy. I was completely at the mercy of a man who turned out to be a predator. I checked more papers. George had made several investments in recent years without consulting me. He had bought shares in mining companies. He had invested money in a friend's business that turned out to be a pyramid scheme. He had even lost a considerable amount speculating with cryptocurrency the previous year. Our savings, which should have been enough for a decent retirement, had been significantly reduced by his impulsive decisions. But the most disturbing thing was a series of cash withdrawals he had been making monthly for the past 2 years. Large amounts, always on Friday afternoons, always from the same bank branch. What was George spending so much cash on? Why did he need those transactions to be untraceable? The water boiled, but I no longer wanted tea. I felt like vomiting. My husband was not only an abuser, but also a poor manager who was squandering our assets on activities he preferred to keep secret. I heard footsteps in the hallway. It was George heading towards Clara's room. I looked at the stove clock. 12:43 a.m., punctual as always for his appointment with horror. This time I decided to be more daring. Instead of staying as the kitchen, pretending I did not know what was happening, I walked into the hallway. I stood there, not hiding, waiting for George to see me when he left my daughter's room. An hour and 15 minutes later, the door opened. George appeared in the doorway, adjusting his pajama pants. When he saw me standing there, looking directly at him, he showed neither surprise nor shame, only annoyance. "What are you doing standing there like a ghost, Martha? Waiting for you? For what? To tell you that it is over. Tonight all of this ends." George walked towards me with that smile that now gave me chills. The same one he used when he thought he had everything under control. "Oh yeah? And what are you going to do, Martha? Who are you going to tell? The police? Your sister Eleanor? Pastor Dave from the parish?" He stopped right in front of me, invading my personal space in an intimidating way. "Go ahead, tell them. Tell them that the respectable George Sullivan, who has been an honest merchant at the Peachtree Farmers Market for 40 years, who has been a Sunday school teacher at church, who has never gotten into trouble with anyone, is abusing his own daughter. Let us see who believes you." His words hit me like slaps because I knew he was right. George had built an impeccable reputation in the community. He was loved by the neighbors, respected by the market merchants, appreciated by the pastor. Who would believe the accusations of a housewife without concrete proof against such a respectable man? "Besides," he continued, "do you really want all of Atlanta to know that these things happen in your family? Do you want Lily to grow up with the stigma of coming from a family of degenerates? Do you want Ethan to leave Clara when he finds out what has been happening? Because, believe me, Martha, men do not usually stay with women who have been, shall we say, contaminated. Clara is not to blame for anything." "Oh, no. Are you sure about that?" George's tone changed, becoming crueler, more sadistic. "Are you sure your daughter does not enjoy our nighttime meetings? Are you sure she is not the one who seeks me out, who seduces me, who begs me to come to her room? You are sick. I am telling the truth. Clara is an adult woman, Martha. A woman who has been married for years to a man who works at night and does not give her the attention she needs. A woman who found the affection and passion she cannot find in her husband, in her father. George's words were like pure poison. He was trying to convince me that my daughter was a willing accomplice to her own abuse, that I was the only one who saw evil where there was only family love. Tomorrow is Christmas, Martha. A day of peace, of family, of forgiveness. I suggest you reflect very carefully on whether you want to ruin this beautiful celebration with your sick fantasies. George headed towards our room, but before entering, he turned back to me one last time. And think about Lily, too. Think about what can happen to such a pretty, innocent girl if her grandmother decides to create unnecessary problems in this family. The threat could not be clearer. If I spoke, Lily would be his next victim. That night, I could not sleep for a minute. I stayed sitting in the living room, looking at the Christmas tree that now seemed grotesque to me, thinking about all the previous Christmases we had celebrated in this same house. When had the abuse started? Had there been signs that I had ignored? Had I been blind to my daughter's silent pleas for years? I remembered conversations I had had with Clara in recent months, her comments about how difficult marriage was, about how sometimes she felt she could not take it anymore, about how she envied the divorced women she knew. I had interpreted those comments as the normal complaints of a wife going through a rough patch with her husband. It never occurred to me that she was asking for help in the only way she dared. I also remembered changes in her behavior that I had attributed to other causes. Her refusal to wear tight or low-cut clothing when she used to be very flirty. Her habit of showering with the bathroom door locked. When she used to be very relaxed about privacy, the way she tensed up when George hugged her at family gathering scenes. Something I had interpreted as shyness or bad mood. All the signs had been there. I just had not wanted to see them because recognizing them would have meant admitting that the man with whom I had built my life was a monster. When December 25th, Christmas Day dawned, I made a decision. I could not confront George directly because he had all the advantages. The money, the property, the reputation, the power. But I could start documenting what was happening. I could seek professional help. I could find a way to protect Clara and Lily without putting them in greater danger. Clara appeared in the kitchen around 8, 0 inches the morning to prepare Christmas breakfast. She had new bruises on her neck that she was trying to cover with makeup and a light scarf. Her eyes were swollen and red. "Good morning, Mum," she said in a hoarse voice. "Good morning, honey." We stayed silent for a few minutes, her making coffee and me pretending to read the Christmas newspaper. Finally, without looking up from the coffee maker, Clara whispered, "Mum, I need to tell you something." My heart raced. Finally, my daughter was going to confess what was happening. Was she going to ask me for help? "Tell me, honey. I am pregnant." The world stopped completely. Clara was pregnant. Ethan had been working night shifts for 3 months without a single day off. George had been abusing her every night during that same period. How far along? I managed to ask in a trembling voice. 2.5 months, my daughter replied, and started crying inconsolably. At that moment, I knew that this was not just a case of sexual abuse. It was much worse than that. Clara continued crying over the kitchen table while I tried to process the magnitude of what she had just confessed to me. My daughter was pregnant by her own father. The baby growing in her womb was the product of the systematic abuse that George had been committing for months. And Ethan, poor Ethan, who worked double shifts to support his family, had no idea of the nightmare his wife was living. "Clara, look at me," I said, taking her hands. "You need to tell me exactly when all this started." My daughter raised her face, and in her eyes I saw a mixture of shame, terror, and pleading that broke my heart. "It started when Ethan got the night guard job about 4 months ago. At first, Dad only came to ask me if I needed anything, if I was afraid of being alone. He said it was his responsibility as the man of the house to take care of the women when Ethan was not there. And then, he started staying longer. He would bring me a glass of water, sit on the edge of my bed to talk. He would tell me that Ethan did not value me, that a man who works at night cannot satisfy his wife as he should." Clara wiped her tears with the back of her hand, but they kept falling non-stop. One night he told me I looked very tense, that I needed a massage to relax. I told him no, but he insisted. He said it was normal between family, that he gave Mom massages all the time. That is a lie. "Clara, your father has never given me a massage in 35 years. I know now, but at that moment I do not know, Mom. I felt so lonely, so abandoned by Ethan, so tired of everything, and Dad was very convincing. He said he loved me more than anyone in the world, that only he understood my needs." "When was the first time?" 2.5 months ago, right after Ethan started working so many weekends to earn extra money for the Christmas holidays. The chronology fit perfectly. Ethan working extra shifts, George taking advantage of that absence to abuse Clara, and now a pregnancy that could not be from any other man than my husband. "Clara, have you told Ethan you are pregnant?" "No. How am I going to tell him? He's going to want to know exact dates. He is going to do the math. He is going to realize that this cannot be his." "And what does your father plan to do about it?" Clara's expression changed, becoming even more terrified. "He says we have to tell Ethan the baby is his. He says it is easy to convince men of these things, that they are going to be so excited to be a dad that they will not ask questions. And if Ethan were to suspect something, Dad says he has contacts in the police who can invent domestic violence charges against Ethan. He says he can have him put in jail, and I will be left without a husband and without a way to support Lily." George had thought of everything. He had a plan for every contingency, a threat for every person who could interfere with his absolute control over the family. He was more cunning and more dangerous than I had imagined. "What else did he tell you?" "That if I ever try to leave him or tell what is happening, he is going to make sure Lily has an accident. He did not tell me what kind of accident, but when he says it, his eyes look different, like he is really capable of hurting her." At that moment, we heard footsteps coming down the stairs. George was heading to the kitchen for his Christmas breakfast. Acting as if it were a normal day in a normal family, Clara quickly wiped her tears and started beating eggs to make a special breakfast. "Good morning, my beautiful family," bellowed George with that cheerful fake voice he had perfected for special occasions. "Merry Christmas." He approached Clara and gave her a kiss on the cheek that lasted too long while putting his hand on my daughter's waist in a way that now made me nauseous. "How did you wake up, my girl? Did you sleep well after our talk last night?" Clara visibly tensed, but kept beating the eggs without answering. "Martha, why do you not set the table? Today is a special day, and I want everything to be perfect." George poured himself coffee and sat in his usual chair, from where he could observe all our movements. He started reading the news on his phone, commenting cheerfully on the football results and the government's plans for the coming year, as if there was not a single worry in the world. When Lily came down for breakfast, dressed in her new Christmas pajamas, George completely changed his attitude. He became the loving, protective grandfather that all the neighbors knew. "There is my princess. Did you see the gift Santa brought you?" Lily smiled, but even her smile looked forced. My granddaughter had developed that ability that children who live in dysfunctional homes have to read tense atmospheres and act accordingly. "Yes, Grandpa, thank you very much." "Oh, are you not going to give me a hug?" Lily approached hesitantly and gave him a quick hug. George held her longer than necessary, stroking her hair in a way that made me feel sick. "You are a very special girl, Lily. Very, very special." During breakfast, George monopolized the conversation, talking about plans for the day. We would have visitors in the afternoon. My sister Eleanor with her family, some neighbors, Ernie and his wife. Everyone would come to wish us happy holidays and enjoy the Christmas dinner that Clara had been preparing for days. "It is going to be a perfect Christmas," George said while spreading jam on his toast. "A celebration that we will remember forever." The irony of his words was unbearable. This was indeed going to be a Christmas we would remember forever, but not for the reasons he suggested. After breakfast, when George went out to the yard to check the Christmas lights he had installed to impress the neighbors, Clara approached me in despair. "Mom, I cannot keep going like this. I cannot keep pretending everything is fine. Last night he told me that after the baby is born, he is going to start training Lily too. He says it is important for the women in the family to learn their role from a young age. Training to be a good wife, he says. To learn. Impossible to tell." I stood in the living room archway. "We need to talk." "I think we're done talking." Marcus shot back. "Sit down." It wasn't a request. Something in my tone compelled them to obey. They slumped onto the sofa, forming a unified front against me. "I want you out of this house," I said quietly. "You have until the end of the month." Victoria's face crumpled. "Dad, please. You tried to poison me, drug me into signing something while incapacitated." "What papers were they?" "Victoria, a power of attorney, a will amendment, property deeds." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Real ones. Finally, but they were for herself, not for what she had done. Marcus leaned forward, his voice hardening. "We can explain this. You're overreacting." She made a mistake. She regrets it. She regrets failing. There's a difference. I set down my coffee cup with precision. "You deliberately switched the glasses." His accusation hung in the air. "You poisoned your own daughter." I simply returned the gift. We stared at each other, the lines drawn, the war declared. "We're not leaving," Marcus said flatly. "This is our home. We have rights. No rights. No claim. Nothing." I filed the paperwork at the end of February. "After that, I'll take legal action." Behind me, Victoria was sobbing. Marcus's voice rose. We'll see what the lawyers think about elder abuse and mental incapacity. I stopped and turned around. Try it. Please give me more evidence. He snapped his mouth shut. I spent the next 3 days observing them like specimens under glass. They kept to Victoria's room, voices rising and falling behind closed doors. I positioned myself near the air vents, near the doors, wherever sound travelled. Old house, thin walls, secrets that leaked. On Thursday morning, I heard Marcus on the phone. Competency evaluation, financial manipulation by the daughter. She deliberately poisoned him. Yes, I can document his erratic behavior. They were building their narrative, painting me as the villain, them as a concerned family, protecting an old man from himself. I documented everything, noting snippets of conversation, marking dates and times, photographing the financial records I obtained, the bank statements that showed transfers of money from my accounts to theirs, purchases made on the credit cards I had given them, the paper trail of dependency. Patterns emerged. 15 months ago, a $50,000 transfer for emergency house repairs that were never done. 8 months ago, a $70,000 withdrawal for an undocumented investment opportunity. 3 months ago, Marcus suddenly had a new car in his name paid for in cash. My money, their lifestyle, my trust, their exploitation. On February 20th, sitting in my study, I called the law firm of Arthur Finch, the lawyer my banker recommended for complex family matters. The receptionist's voice was efficient and professional. I need a consultation regarding potential fraud, financial elder exploitation, and attempted. I paused, choosing my words. Harm by family members. Typing sounds on her end. Can you come in on Thursday? What time does 2:00 inches the afternoon work for you? I'll be there. I hung up the phone. Through the window, I saw Victoria and Marcus in the backyard, engrossed in an urgent conversation, planning their next move. I will too. I opened my laptop and started a new document. Financial manipulation timeline. Evidence log. The first entry started with a date 15 months ago. The cursor blinked on the blank document waiting. I typed the header, Financial Manipulation Timeline, Evidence Log. Below it, I began listing everything I remembered, tracing back through 18 months of trust slowly eroded into exploitation. March 2024, transfer of $50,000 for emergency house repairs. I checked my bank records, found the transaction, and cross-referenced it with my calendar. No contractor had visited the house that month. No permits were filed. The house looked exactly the same. First lie, first theft. In May 2024, they had scheduled a lawyer consultation. I searched my email and found the confirmation. They had told me it was about estate planning to simplify things for everyone. Now I understood what they really wanted. Access, control, signatures on documents I never authorized. The list grew. Each entry a small wound that had seemed insignificant at the time. Taken together, they formed a pattern that looked like premeditated theft. I worked until midnight, then reviewed everything at dawn on February 21st. I printed 3 copies, organized them in labeled folders, and dressed in my best suit, projecting competence, not victimhood. The drive downtown to Miami took 40 minutes. The Brickell Financial District rose in glass towers that caught the morning sun and reflected it like mirrors. I parked in the underground garage, took the elevator to the 24th floor, and carried my folder like evidence, which it was. Arthur Finch's office occupied a corner with views of Biscayne Bay. The receptionist, professional and efficient, led me to a conference room where the city spread out below me like a map of territory to be defended. Arthur entered promptly at 2:40 seconds. Impeccable suit. A gaze that evaluated without judging. We shook hands. I liked that he didn't waste time on unnecessary formalities. I opened the folder and slid the documents across the polished wood. Everything I can document, timeline, hospital medical records, testimony. He read without interruption, asking incisive questions and taking notes with a fountain pen that deliberately scratched the notepad. Florida Statute 825, he finally said. Exploitation of an elderly person. It covers attempts to gain control of assets through coercion, manipulation, or incapacitation. He reviewed my file. This shows a clear pattern. The restaurant incident, the attempt to drug the person, that is a felony. But we need more documentation of their current behavior. What kind of documentation? Their current actions, conversation where they discuss strategies, attempts at manipulation. You mentioned they still live in your house. I nodded and he continued. I'm going to recommend a private investigator, Serena Kim. She's an ex-police detective specializing in elder fraud cases. She can set up surveillance and document everything legally. He wrote a name and number on his card and slid it across. Call her. Get proof of what they're doing now, not just what happened before. Then we talk about protective trusts, restraining orders, and a potential civil lawsuit. I left with a feeling I hadn't felt in weeks. Validation. This wasn't paranoia. This was legitimate protection. 4 days of close observation followed. I wrote everything down. Their whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. The way they watched me like predators stalking an injured prey. Marcus's hand was always on Victoria's shoulder. Control disguised as affection. On Monday morning, February 25th, I drove to Pinewood. Serena Kim's office was in a modest building, professional degrees on the walls, no wasted space. She looked to be in her late 30s with a penetrating gaze and a direct manner. "Arthur sent your file," she said aver. A quick note. If this incredible story of betrayal and revenge touched you, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and share this video. Your support helps me grow and allows me to keep sharing more compelling stories like this one.